My guest is a stand-up comedian from Seattle. She's been featured on the Upper Left Comedy Festival and performs regularly all over the Pacific Northwest. I'm excited to welcome Juno Men.
Hey, Adam. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Sorry, we always jump right into it.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's
we
quick.
100% just 0 to 1,000.
Exactly.
So I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm not very good about that, but how you been? I haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I think the last time we saw each other was when we unintentionally ran into each other in Portland.
That's right.
Legitimately, that might have been the last time we saw each other.
Funhouse.
That was a fun experience for me because it was, I think, my first time just being on the road doing comedy in another city and then running into a comedian from my city without planning on it.
Yeah.
And so that was a real novel experience. And then it was cool just running into you and being like, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I feel like we've rotated spots a little bit. Like you were going through some stuff at that point, and then, I've been going through some stuff too now. And it's breakup stuff.
I have to wonder if that was 90% of the motivation for having me on is just trying to work your way into some free therapy.
Yeah. Get a little bit of, I've been paying for it for sure.
Oh yeah.
I fully, it's like life change. Like, got to go back and get some shit straightened out.
Okay. Let me know if this is a question that's too far, and definitely edit this out. Is your therapist a white person?
No.
You don't have a white therapist?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it a man?
No.
Really?
Yeah. Why is that so shocking?
No. Listen. I'm not totally shocked. I just know that oftentimes when people seek out therapists, they try to find people that can relate to their experience. Like for me, I have a transgender queer therapist, and I sought them out specifically because I was looking for someone to help me navigate, coming out as trans. Mm-hmm. And really, this was all just a build up to some lame joke about like, is this your way of just trying to get like free queer therapy? But that joke busted. So let's move on. What else are we talking about?
No, my therapist, like I attribute it completely to dumb luck. Like I came across a therapist through like Psychology Today, and
oh wow,
just awesome. Like from day one. And I had gone to two therapists before.
Okay.
And one of them had like the electromagnetic paddles. Are you familiar with those? Like where they said like she
Oh, are you talking about like the Scientology paddles? Like hey, we're gonna tell you what planet you're going to inherit after you pass away?
I think it was something related to that, because like when I brought it up to my therapist now, I was like, so we did this stuff with these like paddles, like where I was holding them, and she was like, tell me about a traumatic experience, and then she pressed a button and it like went through, and I never really felt anything. But
wait, were they trying to like condition you to associate traumatic memories with electric shocks?
I have no idea. The funny part to me was I told my current therapist about that, and she was so nice about it. She's like, yeah, I don't do that. I don't do that. So we're not going to do that. And I'm like, I still don't know what it was.
Okay. Real question. Did you start like with this first therapist in the 1930s and then pause therapy for 70 years? Because that seems antiquated.
That was her approach, possibly. It was just like, let's get back to basics here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we go any further, I do have to say, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications bell so you don't miss our content. And then if you have a question for Juno or myself, throw it in the comments or question, whatever. Just do it if you can. It helps us with the page. Also, I don't know who Arden is. He's been commenting a lot. If you can tell me who that is, I'm just curious at this point. And then shout out to Chandler. He's always liking our stuff. Chandler Noble Hatch. But back into therapy.
Chandler Noble. Oh, I know Chandler. Yeah. I think I've met them once. I'm actually Arden, by the way.
Are you?
No.
God.
I mean, yes, that's been my long game to try to get on the show
I was so
for
excited
a couple
there.
of years.
I'm like, who is? I'm gonna find out, and it's gonna be somebody that like I spend time with almost daily. I
Yeah,
bet.
that's
It's just a close friend.
it's gonna be one of those like Mission Impossible mask reveal moments where they like their face crumples and melts down,
like,
and it's gonna be a close family member.
yeah,
is who
I'm
Arden
just
is.
gonna be let down that it wasn't. It'll just be my mom. That's who it is.
And she'll just be like, "Honey, I wanted to support the comedy stuff. Your sketches are so good."
So dumb. All right, so I wanted you to come on today. Besides just to shit on my previous therapist, but you're big into movies. I'm a big movie buff.
Love movies.
And then
yeah.
you've been doing stand up in Seattle for a while, and wanted to talk about movies and then just like some comedy stuff locally. And I saw that you're a recruiter or like have done consulting work.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that on here? Is it?
No, we can definitely talk about it.
I actually applied at Amazon and went through that
really?
interview process. So I'd be
how many
curious
leadership principles did you have to cite?
14, right?
That's like, I think they have like 90 leadership principles.
Really?
They like companies all have their own set of values and principles and like core pillars or however they want to
Theirs
market
is
it.
just like never go home from work.
Yeah.
Just
basically.
work as much as you humanly possibly
I mean,
can.
they frame it more diplomatically, but yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. I ate it in that interview. I did terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was something that like for weeks I couldn't believe that I got the interview, and the job I was working before, it was like probably the compensation was like 40% difference.
Okay. Like 40% higher at Amazon.
But when you factor in everything with like what the actual options are and the vesting aspects of that, this is the nerdiest podcast I've done for sure. But it looked really enticing on paper, but then when I like broke it all down, it wasn't as good. And
were they offering the like 5/5/40/40 vesting for their options? Like you get 5% the first year, 5% the second year, 40% and 40% the third and fourth years.
Yeah, but then they cut most people within those first 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's so if you remove the human element from it, like if you remove emotion and like the concept of treating people nicely or well, it's actually a really brilliant compensation strategy, because then they can recruit people in under the promise of paying them all this money and then let them go or kind of manage them out before they actually get to vest those options.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, do a lot of people just like they want to quit after 2 years?
So I'm not citing any data here. I'm just speaking anecdotally from conversations.
Well, there's a lot
I've
of
had.
people, a lot of people locally that I'm sure you know who've worked there.
Yeah.
I know people that work there too, but
I mean, like Amazon has a reputation for being a real grinder of a tech company. They're not Grinder, but to be very clear about that, they just grind people out. And I don't know, like, a lot of tech companies, because this is Seattle and we have a lot of tech companies, espouse ideals of having a great culture and being a great place to work and like really caring about their employees, and Amazon doesn't do any of that, and I'll give them credit for that. Like they're very straightforward about, you will come here and work really, really, really hard, and we will pay you a dragon's den's worth of gold if you can make it to the end of 4 years.
yeah. How many people do you think do?
Man, that's a tough question. I have to imagine not a lot. Like a lot of people.
They have to be like just crazy human beings.
Motivated and young. Like I think Amazon, I've heard, is at least a couple of years ago.
It's a very nice way of putting just like
Listen,
win at all costs.
I have been described as obnoxiously wholesome, and I think that my optimistic worldview has probably gotten me into a lot of trouble. And it's probably going to get me into trouble when it comes to characterizing Amazon, because I'm like, let's look on the bright side. To be clear, I don't love Amazon's work model. I don't love their compensation model. I don't love how they treat employees. But at the very least,
when you can get something delivered in
listen,
2 hours or less, it's fantastic.
I use Amazon. It is amazing.
It's great. Yeah.
I went to a wedding a couple of years ago, and instead of like shopping for a nice couture dress that would fit me, I just bought 7 dresses on Amazon and returned 6 of them to the Whole Foods 2 blocks from where I live.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
let's
amazing.
just stop shitting on them. Who cares what it takes to make that happen? Is
this just going to be an hour of HR, Amazon?
No,
discussing?
I wanted to talk to you about my interview because like I was so excited for this interview, and I like
what was the job?
That was the first curveball.
Okay.
The job was for soft goods marketing, and it was supposed to be in sporting goods.
Okay.
And I got there and like, how do you feel about lighting? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, that's what group you're being hired into if you get this job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is lighting? Like I had no idea what they were even like lighting in an office space. And they're like, just lighting. How do you feel about it? I'm like, I don't know anything about lighting. Like and all of the interview questions were, I was so bad at everything. And it's 8 hours of where you just getting they're stacked interviews where you see a different person from the group basically, or like other managers, and they gave me like all these equations or like just problems to solve to like see how I solved the problem. And I was just so bad at it. Like I would be like, this is what I think the answer is, and they're like, okay, elaborate a little further, and be like, that's what I got. Like it wasn't great.
So, one, I'm sorry. That sounds like a real shitty interview experience. And two, that is such a common experience, I think, in the tech sector to engage with a candidate under the premise of hiring them into one job and then immediately kind of shift things like it's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
And it's very casual. Like, they'll oftentimes be like, hey, we want to talk to you about this role at this level, bring you in for the interview, and then be like, we actually are interviewing you for this role at a level below what we advertised to you. And the money is just still such a step up from where you probably are.
Yeah.
Because Amazon has, infinite money that you wrestle with it for a day or two, and then you go, yeah, of course I'll still interview for this job.
It's like competitive enough for you to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't really give a shit what the job title is. Like money, and I that regard, I actually kind of respect it because it's both your cards are sort of out on the table. Like people are taking that job because of the comp, and then, or they're taking that job. They're not applying to that job.
Yeah.
But I kind of respect that.
I mean, I respect it in the same way that I can respect a casino having like millions of dollars to use as leverage against players, because like that's I think what a lot of the interview process is in high stress situations where like there's a lot of money at stake, is they don't really care if you walk away because they have an infinite pool of other candidates they can pull from, so they can fuck with you all they want. They can lower the money by 20%. They can change the job. They can change the department. They can change the product that you're working on.
Okay, here's just a selfish question. As somebody that is in that field, like if a company like that, doesn't have to be Amazon, but if they offer you, say, $80,000 a year,
sure,
right? And that's their first offer, should you always like counteroffer?
Yeah. So I'd say that in any negotiating situation with any job offer, if they make you an offer, 99% of the time that means that they really want you. And if you ask for a counteroffer, if you counter with 10% more, 20% more, the worst they're going to do 99% of the time is just say, sorry, we can't do that. And then you can either take the offer that's on the table or walk away. But companies will almost never pull their offer because you offer a counteroffer unless you're being really shitty about it. Like, hey, give me 3 months to think about this.
Yeah. Because they've put that much time and energy, like just sunk costs.
Right. And their incentive is like they want to hire the best person for the role. And if they've made you the offer, then in their framework for that process, you're the best person for the role.
They love you.
I wouldn't say love. Yeah. I think that's a generous characterization of the relationship.
Yeah.
But they want to hire you.
Yeah, they're infatuated. Like you're the person they want for this.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're willing to
Yeah.
They're not going to offer you the best thing first, knowing that too.
Yeah. And okay, wait. Can I share a story here about a couple of offers that I've negotiated? again, like I tried to err on the side of just being very kind and empathetic and believing in the best of the world. And I was amazed that this worked last year. I was giving advice to someone that got an offer from a company that they'd been contracting with to join them full time. And they liked the offer. It was significantly more money than they were making beforehand as a contractor. And they came to me and they were like, hey, what do you think I should do? Should I ask for more money? And I was like, are you happy with the money that they're offering? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, cool, here's what you do. If you like your recruiter, if you trust them, if you trust the company, which you almost never do, but like if you have a really good feeling, maybe lean into that. Just tell them you'll take the offer that's on the table, but you would be happier if they offered more. And he was like, are you sure? Like, shouldn't I try to play my cards close to my chest? And I was like, if you trust your recruiter, if you trust the manager that you've been working with as a contractor for like 6 months, and it's going to be your manager if you join full time, tell them you'll take the offer, but you'd like this much more and you'd be significantly more excited to start. And he did that, and then he got the offer. He actually got more money by saying, I'll take the offer.
How much of a percentage though?
It was like, I don't know, 5 to 10% bump.
That's good.
Like in cash. Yeah. I was really happy with it. And I characterize that as like good faith negotiation, where you just kind of come at it being very open and honest and forthright about where you are.
Yeah. That's actually really smart.
I like it. I feel like it speaks to people's goodwill and their want to work with you.
And then you can always be like, follow up if your manager's like, why aren't you feeling very well? It's like, because I'm not as happy as I could be.
You could be like, listen, I would be 20% more productive if I made 5% more money.
If I was 20% happier.
That's a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good to know. Well, I don't want to stick on just Amazon or just HR stuff the whole time, but it is fun to have somebody. I mean, I've had a bunch of different types of guests on here, just different backgrounds and stuff, but you've been doing stand-up for 2 years, and then are you doing screenwriting stuff too?
Yeah. So I've been doing stand-up in Seattle for 2 years, and I never know how to answer this question when someone asks me how long I've been doing it for, because the answer, like the long answer, is I actually started doing stand-up in Missoula, Montana in like 2014 or 2015, except I live 3 hours away from Missoula, or like an hour and a half. I don't know. I'm a slow driver.
Where were you living?
I was living in Helena.
Okay.
And when I was there was no real stand-up comedy scene. And so...
Shocking.
I know. It's astonishing that a state with less than 1 million people at the time would not have a thriving comedy scene.
What were you doing in Montana?
I went to college there.
Okay.
I went to a small liberal arts college because they had a great debate program, and that's what I did in community college, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. And then after I graduated, someone was like, do you want a job? And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. Money sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So I started doing comedy in 2014, 2015 in Montana. But like to do it, I would have to finish up with work at 5 and then immediately hop in my car and drive like, let's call it 2 hours to Missoula to do a 3-minute set and then drive back so I didn't have to burn a vacation day.
Yeah.
And I would do maybe 2 or 3 sets a year.
Yeah.
For like 2 years. Then I moved to Seattle in 2016, 2017, thought I'm going to do it. Like I'm moving here to do comedy. It's a big city. I want to grind out. I want to be a stand-up. And then immediately was like, I got to find a place to live. Oh, I got to get a job. Oh, the job's going pretty well. I gotta try to get converted so I have benefits. Oh, this is going well. I have to try to get a promotion. And it was just like 4 or 5 years of getting sidetracked with everything outside of comedy. Yeah.
And who was around when you were starting here?
Gosh. So 2 years ago, there was Andy Iwancio, there was Stephanie Nam, there was yourself, there was Dan Hurwitz, there was Monica Nevi, Bobby Higley, a ton of people that I was just excited to see around, and that I wanted to work with, and that I've gotten to work with.
But wait, so you said 2016 you moved here?
Oh, wait, were you asking who was around in 2016 when I started doing?
Just in Seattle.
Oh.
Did you move here in 2018 or?
No, so I moved here in late 2016.
Yeah.
And then are you asking like what comedians I knew about then?
Yeah. Or just like who was when you started doing stand up in Seattle, who were the people around?
So I didn't start doing stand up in Seattle until 2021.
Oh wow.
All the work stuff and the just trying to figure out how to live in the city, sidetracked me for 4 years. So I didn't really get involved with the scene until 2 years ago.
But were you like screenwriting before that?
A little bit. I was a film major for a hot minute in college, and then I got scared because I read a lot of statistics about the employability rates of working in film. And so I thought I'd get a degree in communications as my backup plan without realizing that there's no clear employment trajectory for anyone with a degree in communications. And so I just kind of worked whatever jobs people would throw my way. Like I was a business analyst for the motor vehicle division in Helena, Montana for 2.5 years.
That sounds thrilling.
It was real exciting coming in every weekend and being the youngest person by 15 years in my office and being like, did you see the new X-Men movie? And people would be like, no, I was hanging out with my grandkids.
Yeah, that's brutal. Well, you told me you really got into Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I love that movie.
And I'm a huge movie person. I watched it prior to this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just for this episode.
What did you think? Thank you, by the way.
Yeah. I'm glad I did. You are, I think, the second or third comic who's come on telling me how great it was. Like this comedian Chase DeRusso from New York, he would not shut up about it. He's like, it's the best movie ever. Like he went and saw it in theaters multiple times when it came out. And I think like I fucked up a little bit. So I'm going to be completely honest about it. The first like hour to hour and a half probably wasn't in like the most ideal headspace to watch it. Okay. And I was on my phone a little bit. Okay. So that's not good. Did you after an hour and a half, did you look up and you were like, oh wow, all these people are Asian? What? I think some of that might have played a role. Like not having a key character that I identified with played a role, which, helps me understand where how a lot of people feel looking at Hollywood.
Yeah.
But the second or the third of the movie, I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the last 5 minutes, the all at once?
No, I really liked the part where he was talking about using love as a weapon or like mindset in life. Right.
Like kind of, you're talking about the hyper romance. One's a film star and the other one's like a business tycoon world. And he's given this really beautiful monologue about how only kindness matters and how, a lot of people characterize him as being naive or dumb because he chooses to see the good side in things, but it's really a deliberate tool that he uses to try to make it through the world.
And how he fought with it. Like that was the part of it that I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like that. Yeah. So my takeaway from the movie is a good movie. I need to watch it several more times.
I've watched it 5 times and I feel like I find something new in the movie every single time. Excuse me. And to your point, like, I think one of the reasons I resonated with the movie so deeply was that I could relate to a ton of the characters, right? Like the movie not only is a boon for Asian representation in Western media, it also touches on a lot of themes that are really specific, I think, to the Asian diaspora, right? Like things about kind of cultural generational divides, rejection from your parents having the best of intentions, but the outcomes still not being what you need, love, acceptance, kindness. And then it also just incorporated a lot of like really awesome, I think, narrative and media kind of nodes that have been really present in a lot of the media that people of Asian descent in America have consumed over years, right? Like video game stuff, Super Smash Bros, kung fu movies, sci-fi. Like it's just this kind of beautiful, ridiculous jambalaya of 1,000 different things all working together really, really well.
Yeah. When I watched the part where the mom was saying to the daughter, like she didn't know what to say. She's like, "You're getting fat." Like it made me think of you have a really great joke about your relationship with your mom, right?
Yeah.
And it like, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say like that for me felt like such a crystal clear moment of writing that spoke to Asian American audiences and especially younger Asian American audiences that struggled with having a more affectionate relationship with their parents, because Asian parents do just go, you're getting really fat. And that in their heads, I think, is oftentimes their way of saying, I love you, please take care of yourself.
But it's
and it hurts so much.
Yeah.
Like I cannot tell you the number of times I've gone back since moving out of my parents' place to visit them or my grandma or my aunt, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're getting really fat. You need to lose weight." And then they'll like portion off the rest of whatever food we were having right onto my plate.
Just yeah, God.
Be like, "Hey,"
but wasn't that part of like when you talked to your mom about transitioning? Like,
yeah. So, do you want me to tell?
Yeah.
So
if you're comfortable, like,
yeah, no, totally. The short version of it is that when I came out to my mom, I was really nervous, and I showed her a picture of myself to kind of really cement in the fact that I was transitioning, and the first thing she said was, "Oh my God, you are so pretty," and then she paused and said, "But if you lost some weight, I think you could be really beautiful." And that was genuinely a really touching moment with me and my mom, where I was like, I'm gonna take the win in this kind of ocean of like,
God
she said
damn
some
it,
nice
why-
things and mean things.
Like what is it about the weight stuff though? Because I've just heard it so much amongst like Asian. Is it just attributed to weight and health?
I think some of it might be attributed to weight and health. This is me conjecturing 1,000% at this point and not speaking from personal experience. I think a lot of it also might just be like there might be a heavy emphasis on physical aesthetic in the Asian community because there's a heavy emphasis on partnering up and finding someone to build a life with, because there's a heavy emphasis on financial stability and domestic stability. And I suspect that a lot of that emerges from a lot of people that have immigrated to the U.S. from Asia, come from situations where there wasn't a lot of financial or domestic stability, like to kind of go down this rabbit hole. My parents both immigrated from Cambodia, and when they did, they came here with not a lot, right? Like they fled the Khmer Rouge, the communists in Cambodia. My understanding is that they had to walk a couple of nights on their own, and they had to sneak out of the camp and make it to a refugee camp.
Damn.
And then when they got to the U.S., they struggled for a long time. Like they took whatever jobs they could find.
Where did they head to? Like where did they land?
So they landed in Thailand, and then this is one of my favorite stories actually. So they landed in Thailand, and the policy at the refugee camp was that every person could only apply for asylum in one country at a time. And my dad went, I think that's dumb. So he made up a different last name for every country he applied for asylum to, and just kind of worked his way through the system. So my last name is actually the last name that he made up.
Really?
To apply for asylum in the U.S.
Do you know what your like last name should be?
I do. So my full name is Juno Men, S-O. And So is actually our family last name, and it's the middle name of my brother, my sister, and every cousin I have on my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
So it worked. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the name.
Yeah, that's interesting. So was he trying to get to the U.S. though? Was that the target?
I don't know if he indexed more heavily on the U.S. over other countries. I know that he applied for asylum in a couple of different countries, and the U.S. is the one that he got.
And both parents did?
Well, so it was that was interesting. So what I've been told by people in my family is that my dad was the first person in my family to get granted asylum to come to the U.S. And so he brought, I believe, his cousin and one or two other family members, and they all came here, and they worked for a couple of months or a couple of years, and they landed in Chicago. And then once they were stable, they started sponsoring other people in the family to come here, and it was just kind of this like chain of people sponsoring folks one after another. And my mom was somewhere in that chain because they knew each other as kids. And that's how they all landed here.
That's crazy.
Yeah. My dad actually worked at the, is it the Field Museum in Chicago?
I'm not sure.
So he worked at the, I think the History and Science Museum there. I think it's called the Field Museum. And he once told me that for like a year, his best friend in America was his broom, because he was a janitor there.
God damn. So he was by himself, just working all the time, just like hoping that. I mean, it's so crazy when there was like no internet.
Yeah.
That's just wild to think about.
Well, man, sometimes I have to stop myself from contemplating the difficulty of the life my parents must have had before they stabilized and got a house and had kids. Because I've gotten like little bits and glimpses, and it is overwhelming. Like, I complain about like, oh, the subway's running late, and my mom was like, yeah, we used to buy rotten fruit because it was cheaper, and that's what we would eat for a couple of days.
Yeah, that's fucking wild.
But yeah, so my dad, he worked at the museum with his brother, and they were both janitors there for, I think, a couple of months or maybe even a couple of years.
Like, what were they doing for fun during that time? Like, it was just misery constantly?
Yeah, I don't think that he would have agreed with the fundamental premise of your question. Fun was not part of, I think, his experience vocabulary at the time, right? Like, his focus, my understanding was just to stabilize and build up as much domestic and financial stability as possible.
Yeah. It must have been really bad in Cambodia. To be fucking that determined to get out of there and do it, like,
it was not fun. It was not.
That was
good.
the opposite of fun. Yeah. God damn.
And I feel like I'm old enough now that relatives feel comfortable sharing some glimpses of their experience there. And every time I do, it's just the most sobering, somber conversation, right? Conversations about like when the communists came, different family members dying. So one of the things that, I occasionally hear my mom and her sisters talk about is they had another sister that was disabled, and they don't know what happened to her. Like, their assumption is that she was killed in the killing fields, because that's what the communist regime did.
What are killing fields?
Oh, this is a deep question. Yeah. So, killing fields are. Okay, I'm going to take a step back here. We talk a lot in the U.S., I think, about a lot of the genocide that's happened across Europe, right? The Holocaust being the big thing that we focus on. In Cambodia, during the Khmer Rouge under Pol Pot, there was incredible genocide. It was astonishing, and I think per capita it might even rival or exceed the European Holocaust. And the killing fields, my understanding, and I have not done a ton of research into this, so it's very possible that I might look this up after and be like, Adam, let's cut this from the podcast. The killing fields were effectively Cambodia's version of the Holocaust in Cambodia.
Were they just
the 1970s
fields
and 80s
where people were killed, or what? Like,
the specific logistics escape me.
Yeah,
I have to.
That's the part I need to know now. I'm like confused about it.
There's actually a great movie that came out, I think, in the 1980s called The Killing Fields that I've had on my to-watch list for a lot of years and just haven't been able to bring myself to get to.
It's a hard thing to be like, yeah, I'm gonna do 2.5 hours of like, some of the most difficult, like.
Well, so like I'm no stranger to really dark docu-inspired movies. Mm-hmm. I've hesitated to watch The Killing Fields for a number of years because, like, that's personal for me.
For sure.
And that for me is, I think, going to have a lot of potential to confront a lot of the things that happened to my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles.
Yeah, that's heavy. So what changed?
But yeah, so my mom was like, you should lose some weight.
Yeah. Would you say Everything Everywhere All at Once is your favorite movie overall?
I feel like I need to give it some time
You still
settle
gotta
in.
watch Killing Field.
Yeah,
to see if
obviously. Clearly.
it's the top 2.
I'm like, yeah, the mecha wheelchair Gundam suit and Everything Everywhere All at Once was incredible. But did you see that scene in the Killing Fields?
Yeah, God. I did love the fanny pack scene.
Oh, the fanny pack scene was incredible.
Yeah, that was tight.
Okay, so how much research have you done into Everything Everywhere All at Once?
0.
Can I
This
just
conversation, yeah.
can I drop a couple of facts?
Yeah.
So it was made on for that scope of movie, a pretty small budget. I think it was less than $40 million.
Really?
It was made for less than $40 million. The Daniels, the 2 directors and writers, originally wrote the script with Jackie Chan in mind, and then they
Got the kid from Goonies.
they got the kid from Goonies. They originally wrote it with Jackie Chan in mind for Michelle Yeoh's role, for the lead role, and then they rethought it as a mother-daughter relationship movie and cast Michelle Yeoh, and she won an Oscar for it. She's the first Asian actress to ever win a lead Oscar award in 90-something years. Ke Huy Quan, the kid from the Goonies, the guy that really, really beautifully was in that fanny pack fight scene.
Yeah, I'm learning all these names for the first time too. I feel so terrible right now. Like I'm so Asian film is just not.
Yeah.
I need to watch more of it for sure.
Am I on here to expand your reach into an Asian demographic?
I just like having conversations with different types of people.
Adam Tiller, he's okay.
Yeah, amongst the.
But yeah, Ke Huy Quan, who plays the dad in Everything Everywhere All at Once, he has a really heartbreaking, beautiful story about his career, where he did Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He did the Goonies, and then he did a couple of other movies, including Encino Man. And then
That movie fucking rules.
It's great.
I love that movie.
I've not seen it, but I've heard it's wonderful.
You haven't seen Encino Man?
No. Are we pausing the podcast to watch Encino Man?
It's like a Brendan Fraser movie that's actually good.
So okay, oh my God, I love the Oscars. Let me finish this thought, and then I'll tell you something about Brendan Fraser as well. But Ke Huy Quan, he did those movies, and then as an Asian male actor in Hollywood, he could not get other roles. Like he was an adult, and he wasn't getting offers, he wasn't getting opportunities, and he's talked extensively about this on multiple podcasts and interviews and shows over the last couple of months leading up to the award season, and he basically retired from acting because he could not get any roles. Mm-hmm. And then he went into stunt choreography. I think he actually worked on one of the X-Men movies.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until Crazy Rich Asians came out a couple of years ago, I think in 2017 or 2018, that he realized that there might be an appetite for more Asian representation in American media. Mm-hmm. And he was inspired to jump back into acting. And so he reached out to a friend that was an agent and said, will you represent me? And the first role he got was his role in Everything Everywhere All at Once, for which he's won the Oscar, the Golden Globe, the Screen Actors Guild Award. And it's really just kind of been a really hot way to get back into acting.
That's wild.
And then the pandemic hit after filming, and he couldn't get roles. And he lost his healthcare, I think, for a couple of months or a year.
God damn. That guy's had a wild career.
Yeah, his career is astonishing and incredible, and also really heartbreaking, right? I think it speaks to how bad things were in mainstream entertainment for a really long time.
Yeah, it just fucking entertainment sucks.
Yeah,
it sucks so much. It's brutal.
I love comedy. I love performing. I love writing. I love figuring out how to deconstruct a situation and resequence it so that I can pull the most amount of joy and humor and surprise and subversion of expectation. Mm-hmm. I don't love the business side, right? Like I understand that producing and networking and marketing and all those things and managing relationships are really important. I just it's a necessary thing that has to happen with it. And
it's not fun.
It's not fun. And for me, that's what I think of when I think of the entertainment industry, right? It's the industry part of the entertainment industry. It's not the entertainment part. It's not the creative part. It's the business side. It's the commodification.
Yeah. And a lot of times in order to create, you have to do that.
Yeah.
And it just ends up being this vicious like cycle of like, oh, I got to do this in order to do this. And like you start losing what are you actually loving here and enjoying doing. And it's complicated. It's really hard because a lot of times in order to get better, you have to do those things.
Yeah. No,
but you can't get those things
that.
without the commodification. Like it's this horrible cycle. And I've had conversations recently where I'm like, yeah, I think I got to do some shit differently. Like I love doing stand up, but then I start questioning like, I mean, we were talking before this, you did a show last night in Tacoma and like some of your material wasn't received well.
Yeah.
And you start questioning like, hey, do I need to start changing me on stage as a result of that? And
right.
The more you branch out, the more feedback you get like that. And I think if you use that feedback well, it can make you better. But you also got to pick your line and stick to it. And like, this is who I am. This is who I play to. And my mistake is that I fucking like being liked. So it's just, I want to figure out a way to do me to the most amount of people possible.
Yeah.
And it's fucking hard.
There is so much I want to say to all of that. For one, as like someone that really likes being liked as well, to another person that likes being liked. I'm sorry, that's tough. People pleasing is tough.
Yeah.
When your gut instinct is immediately to diffuse any confrontation and just kind of figure out how we can make everyone happy. Like for one, making everyone happy is impossible. Like that's never going to happen.
For sure.
And you're never going to make everyone like you. But your gut instinct is to try to figure out how to do that and internalize, like, what do I have to do?
Yeah, especially when you have like a childhood of just like trying to appease people that are like, it's just built into your DNA, you know?
Yeah. But okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because you've been doing comedy for how long?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Have you ever like gotten to a point where you felt like you were really compromising the kind of content you were producing or the jokes that you were writing or the style of comedy that you have to a point where you were uncomfortable so that you could appeal to a different kind of audience?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah. Definitely in Seattle.
Okay.
I think that my comedic sensibility is very different than that of people in Seattle. And I think as a result, I've changed how I present stuff a lot of ways. I don't ever want to like hurt anybody with jokes, but I do think that there are jokes I think are funny that it will not be received well in Seattle. So I have to either figure out how to make those things palatable to those people or accept that like some of those things I find funny, but they don't, and I'm okay with it. It's probably similar to what your material was in Tacoma, like where it's like you stand behind those things that are true to you.
Yeah.
But you know on some level that person and you don't share comedic sensibilities.
Yeah, and I think, okay, two thoughts here. One is to your point, I remember one of the first times I saw you at a mic or a show, it was right when I was starting out. And you walked up and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this guy. And I think one of your first jokes was like you were at a meeting of some kind and another white dude walked up and said, the world's getting really hard for guys like us, huh? Yeah. And immediately I was like, oh, okay, cool. I think I like this brand of humor. But I feel like on some level that joke maybe relates to what you were getting at just a moment ago.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people in comedy, just because I look a certain way doesn't mean that's what my sense of humor is. Just because I identify a certain way, that doesn't make my sense of humor. Like comedy doesn't have those lines. Like it doesn't, if you're funny, you're funny. Whatever you are, you're funny. And that seems to get lost a lot, especially in Seattle to me. Like, it's like, I don't really give a shit what anybody is. Can you make me laugh? Cool. Then that's what we have in common here. And there seems to be more of a priority on what, and this is, preachy or whatever, but like, I've just seen so many fights happen locally over like dumb shit that like I'm like, this doesn't have anything to do with comedy. Like we're here because we're trying to be funny, right? Like that. It's not because it's social hour. Like we're all friends, because most of the people aren't friends to begin with. So it's like I got into comedy because I love comedy. I like laughing. Like that's what I'm there for. And I think there's a lot of like the industry you talked about. Like there's those distractions. I also think there's like policing and like just all these things. It's like we're supposed to be coming up with what's funny. And if people are spending all this time and energy on shit that's not related to that, it's complicated. And there are other layers to this conversation too.
Yeah.
That become, it's not black and white. And
so, yeah, I think this becomes a really complex discussion, right? About identity and representation and inclusion and community. And there's one part of me that's like, yes, I agree. Fundamentally, funny is funny, and I think that we can try to define funny, but that's really hard to do. For me, part of it is just like, can you find a way to extract from your experience something that's relatable to other people in a funny way? And that's one way of thinking about it. By no means do I think that's like all encapsulating. But then there's another element, and admittedly, this is something that I've really found since doing comedy, because one of my reasons for doing comedy was I wanted to be with a creative community, right? And I had just come out as transgender, and I was like, I can't really relate to anyone in my day job. And so part of what I've loved about comedy in Seattle is finding community, right? Like I found a lot of other trans people and a lot of queer people and a lot of people of color and a lot of cutie pock folks, and it's amazing, like what being able to just immediately relate on that experience level. Like the way I describe it is, oftentimes I want to talk calculus and I'm stuck talking arithmetic about my identity and who I am and my experience. And it's really cool being able to run in a community where I can find people that immediately just like relate on the arithmetic level, and we can go straight into the calculus and the complex stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like this is kind of derailing, I think, but
no, I think it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on today is like to be able to have a conversation like this is because there are people that have these mindsets. It's like, oh, it's all good and it's all bad. Like there's clearly value in both, right? Like being around funny people and then being around people that are in similar communities, but they're not always going to get along. And for me personally, I just like, I genuinely stand behind, like, there are people I know outside of the city that make judgments about people in the city and vice versa. Yeah. And most of the time I just had the mindset it's fucking stupid. Like, are they funny and are they a good person to be around? Cool. Yeah. That's what I give a shit about as a comedian. Like, are you doing anything that like, I guess that's what I'm concerned about. Do you make me laugh and are you fun to hang out with? Yeah. And I don't know. Sometimes you have friends that are like, why am I fucking friends with this person too? Like, but they've done you solids. Or, I don't know. And maybe that's my own mistake there, but I didn't really ever have anything figured out before I got into this. Like, I don't think that many people fall into stand up because like everything about their life is perfect.
No, definitely not.
And so when somebody's dysfunctional, I'm not like angry at their dysfunction. I'm just like, they have a different dysfunction than me. Like you don't fucking go up on stage to get validation from a group of strangers because you're clearly wired perfectly or whatever. Like,
listen, Adam, I was in perfect mental health before I started doing comedy. Like, I was.
And when you were down in Portland to that breakup, and like,
exactly. I definitely wasn't going through a mental crisis or going through a depressive low when I made the decision to go into comedy. I was having the time of my life working in corporate America.
Yeah, it fucking sucks.
Okay, I don't want to skitter too far away from the point you're just trying to make, because I think that's a really interesting discussion. But can I tell you about like how I decided to get back into Seattle comedy?
Sure.
So I I'd been working in corporate for a long time, and I want to be very clear. I made a lot of great friends. It afforded me a lot of financial independence. It gave me a sense of identity for a lot of years. And then pandemic hit, and between pandemic fatigue and just like starting to tire of climbing the corporate ladder and realizing that things weren't as virtuous and earnest as I had hoped they would be, I burnt out really hard. Like I think I quit 2 jobs in the scope of a year. Both of them were like, I thought I was going to be with the company for a really long time. And I just kind of hit this depressive low where I was really directionless and anxious all the time. And I was taking edibles every day after work to just try to cope. And I wasn't sleeping well. And
Because you're taking edibles and just staying up all night.
well, yeah, edibles are supposed to help you sleep, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I still had a difficult time sleeping. My anxiety was so overwhelming that like even edibles, and I'm pretty sensitive to weed, like weren't hitting and doing the job. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I actually thought about quitting and just working as a bartender for a while. Even interviewed at a place and then ghosted the interviewer and they ghosted me. And we ran into each other a couple months later and we were like, we're just going to call it even. But I ended up doing this giant road trip from Seattle down to LA, which is the area where I'm from, and stopping in Portland and talking to friends and family, and then stopping in the Bay Area and talking to friends and family, and then spending like 2 weeks in Orange County and talking to friends and family. And I asked every one of them, like, hey, how do you figure out life? Like, you seem happy and stable and content. And they're like, we don't. We have no idea what we're doing. We are so confused. We are so lost. I've been trying to quit my job for months. And that was actually kind of comforting. Like it gave me this sense of like, oh, no one has it figured out. It's not like I'm missing out on this big thing that everyone is in on. So when I got back to Seattle, I was like, I've wanted to do stand-up for a lot of years. I feel like that's a thing that conceptually makes me feel really happy. So I got nothing else to lose. And that's when I started about 2 years ago.
And since then, you've been more depressed?
No, I actually...
I'm kidding.
I mean, I think I've been more open about my depression.
Yeah.
Right? I think I've been more open about like just feeling sad and anxious and not being able to articulate why all the time.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful and terrible thing simultaneously.
Yeah.
I think just somebody said it once, like the most important thing when you get into comedy is just like, it will always be your relationship with other comics. And over time, I've like definitely seen that. Like anything that I end up doing in stand-up that I really makes me very, very happy, it's through another comedian. It's not like...
Are you talking about networking right now? Or are you talking about like the kind of
like
emotional
the business
fulfillment?
side of stuff, or like the you can get lost in a lot of that shit. But if you are around funny people that like make you laugh and that you enjoy being around,
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing you can do. It's...
Yeah.
Not everybody has the same priorities, but...
And I think, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, so let me know if I'm going in the wrong direction here. But, my aspiration, I think, is to be a full-time professional comedian and work for better or for worse in the entertainment industry. And, be a storyteller, be a writer, be a comedian, be a joke writer, like just try to figure out how to do this full-time. And for a while, I was like, I felt a little judgy about other people that were like, oh, I'm just doing this for fun. And I was like, oh, but you're not like really doing this. You're not like grinding. And then it occurred to me like, that doesn't have to be the reason that someone does comedy. Like some people do it because they want to get better at public speaking. Some people do it because they want to make friends. Some people do it because they want to find community. Some people do it because they just think
start
it's
some shit
fun.
too.
Yeah. Some people do it because they're like, how do I get canceled as quickly as possible with the largest number of people?
There's a lot of fun troll opportunities there for sure.
Yeah. But
but if that's the goal, like what steps are you taking now? Like what does your week look like to where if you're here right now and you want to be in that, like what's the daily actions taken?
So I'm still trying to figure that out. I think for me, I'm focusing on fundamentals, like how do I get to be a better writer, right? Because I don't want to just, how do I say this? I don't want to network my way into opportunities that I'm not ready for. Right. I want to make sure that my fundamentals, my foundations are really solid, that like I know how to read an audience. I know how to write a joke. I know how to iterate on tags. I know how to wrap a joke around something that feels really meaningful to me and, relates to a point that I think is important to make if I'm trying to make a point. And you don't always have to make a point. I don't always make a point. And that it represents a viewpoint that I think relates back to, some core value that I have. And so that got really sanctimonious. I'm sorry.
No.
But yeah, like I really just want to focus on fundamentals, right? Like, and to that end, I'm constantly thinking about how I can resequence my set, how I can come up with better segues, how I can come up with better tags, how I can make jokes punchier, if I should move this joke to the end so that I end on a bigger bang. But if I do that, then what joke do I start with? Because I'm sure you think about this too, but sequencing of your set really matters. Like, is there a narrative flow? Am I starting off with a really strong joke to get credibility with the audience? And then am I working new material as well?
Yeah. I'm kind of done with sequencing. Like, I've given up on it.
Yeah.
I guess the longer I've been doing it, the more I just don't, if you watch somebody on stage, like who's been doing a lot of their material, where you can see how much fun they are having with their material. And like, to me, I feel like I have to figure out what helps me have fun in that moment, or else I can't get to be my best version of myself. Like, I can go up and recite jokes. Like, that's not hard. It's just, hey, these are jokes that I wrote, and here's my presentation of them, and like my mechanics and act outs and plans. Like that stuff, that's fine. But like, to be myself with a group of people that I've never met and to be comfortable, that's fucking hard.
Yeah.
And that requires a certain level of, here is me, like, you can have this and I'm going to take this back, but this is this exchange. And until, with every audience, it's different. Like, it needs to be a conversation. It's not a presentation. And the only way I've learned to do that is to have as many conversations with as many types of audiences as possible. And then being around other people that have those conversations with audiences a lot. And then be around people that I think are genuinely funny. But it's this constant like recycling, and like, I'm not going to be able to craft that conversation alone in my apartment.
Yeah.
That's the conclusion I've come to.
Can I ask a question with potentially a really faulty premise?
Sure.
Do you feel like that's kind of the bright line between theater and stand-up? Like, that sort of conversational aspect of really being present with the audience versus just kind of refining and tightening sort of a set or
performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, to me, there are stand-ups that are very presentational that I'm sure a lot of people enjoy.
Sure.
It's just never been the comedy that I gravitate towards. Like, when I feel this is, like, I was watching Mulaney's new special, and he has this exchange with Henry up in the balcony.
Really?
It's like this like fifth grader.
Really?
Yeah. And it, to the naked eye, like, that comes off as like, oh, he's having a crowd work moment. They probably shot that special 4 times at least.
I actually heard from someone that when you do a special with Netflix, part of the deal with Netflix specifically is that they make you reshoot during the filming.
Yeah. So
which is not a thing I've heard you have to do with other platforms.
Reshoot in the moment?
Reshoot in the moment. Like with other platforms, I've heard that you film the set and then they edit and they release as is.
I would think he'd have like 4 shots at it. I've heard like Segura talk about having 4 shots, but like, either way, there was this exchange that happened, and it, like, to the naked eye, it's like, oh, this is a crowd work moment or whatever. But what I think it was this pre-planned exchange.
You think he planted a 10-year-old in the audience?
I don't even know. They didn't zoom in enough to show him.
Do you think it was just like Nick Kroll doing his best 10-year-old impersonation from the darkness of the balcony?
You couldn't hear the other person.
So it was just John Mulaney.
It was Mulaney yelling up to a balcony. And I can be completely wrong on this.
Yeah.
But there's certain aspects of that where like to somebody that doesn't know any better, like that's what's going on there. They're creating this illusion that's going on. But like there are comics that are good enough that find that moment with audiences like that that's completely natural. And it's like Nate Jackson is somebody where it's like he can find moments with audiences that are supernatural and like it takes a lot of not just confidence but trust and like willingness to get through the bad moments or whatever to like create this. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like it's a performance thing, but it is misleading because like if you ask most people, like, what do you think that was in the moment, right? And then if it's not, like Mulaney's like, well, that's part of stand-up. And it's like, the stand-up I love is when somebody looks at a complete fucking stranger and like, what do you think about this? And then it's a real interaction.
See, and oh man, I have so many thoughts on this. I feel like that speaks to like a tool or even a subgenre or a whole different genre of stand-up, right? Because, you know, there's 1,000 different ways that you can be a stand-up comedian. Some people, to your point, are like really refined. And I'm actually a little surprised to hear that about John Mulaney's new special, because I've always thought of him as this person that is so polished and so refined, and he has his timing and his wording down to a T. And I, to the best of my recollection, can't recall him having done any crowd work in any of his other specials.
Yeah, I've heard. Okay, I'm not a hardcore Mulaney person. Like I don't know, so I'm not saying this like judgmentally of Mulaney. I'm just this is what I watched, and this was my response to it as a comic. And I've been watching more specials lately, so I'm like, I'm very interested when you have this hour of material that you've done thousands of times. How do you make it fun for you still?
Yeah. And
you can see it in their face. You can see it when they're doing the jokes. Are they acting or are they having fun? And there's a difference there.
So, you know, I'm speaking from minimal experience here, but I've been running some of the same jokes for like a year or two. And I love those jokes. Like they work really well. There's a reason that they're still in my set.
Doesn't it kill you a little bit?
It does. It absolutely does. Like at some point, like one of my goals this year was to try to retire some jokes, or not even retire, just like put them on the shelf for a couple of months or maybe even a year, and force myself to work on new material, both so that I could like not feel like these jokes that I love are getting stale, but also so that I can like iterate on material and find stuff and polish it and work it.
But it's not the material. That's the thing.
You're saying it's the comedian.
It's you. You have to find you.
Yeah.
Like the chase of the next joke is a defense mechanism, is what I'm like convinced of. It's like, it's really hard to be you up there. So you build up these jokes so that you can get the audience to like you and like your material or whatever. But the material is not you. So you have to figure out, like, just by changing the material, it's still the same mechanism, right? It's this shield of like, these are my jokes and you're going to like me. And if you can drop that need, there's a lot of comics that do it really well. Ian Bagg does it really well, where he does a lot of crowd work. It looks different for everybody. Some people are, they're like super material heavy and that's who they are and that's okay. But there's a lot of people that use their jokes to protect themselves from judgment. I
feel like for me personally, right, it's a balance. Like usually if I'm doing a longer show where I'm like, okay, cool, I really want this to go well, I'll take one of those jokes that I put on the shelf and put it back in my set because I'm like, I know this is good. I know that it's going to get me credibility. And then I'll try to work out new stuff in the middle, right? And part of that is crowd work. Part of that is like, you know, I feel like a lot of comedians kind of have one or two jokes that set them up to get into the crowd. And I have one or two of those, and those are really fun moments where I can really engage with the crowd, especially when I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it does, to your point, feel like a conversation.
So extend that mindset
you're
to
saying
the entire set.
So is that what you do?
That is the goal, is to like get to a point where I trust myself completely when I go on stage, to where I don't necessarily know where I'm going. I don't necessarily know where, like, I have ideas of where I want to get to, but that I need to find it up there and be present in the moment. Because thinking about my material, like, I did a show last night and I was so fucking mad at myself afterwards that I didn't trust myself. And I just,
because you just went with a
into the
pre-planned set?
fucking material, and it's like, it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot be consistent unless I'm consistently having fun.
Yeah.
That's the, I'm getting all weird about stand up.
No,
you're like, yeah.
This is my I think second or third stand up podcast, and so this is exactly the experience I was expecting. Right?
Yeah.
Some kind of deep, messy dive conversation into stand up and the nature of it and how you do it and how different people do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still figuring it out. Right, like
we all are. That's the coolest part. Is like it's like an active Reddit. Like we're just all contributing, and we see,
exactly.
we respond,
but
we react.
Also, like Reddit, don't take anything with a lot of credibility because it's Reddit,
sure.
right? Like anytime I talk about comedy, I always try to caveat it with, this is just my experience so far. This is what I think, or like I'm very clear about trying to wrap it in something soft because. Like when I started doing stand-up 2 years ago, I had a different idea of what it would be than I think of it today. And I'm sure that a year from now, even 6 months from now, I'm going to have a totally different
This podcast,
viewpoint.
A year from now, we're both going to look back at it and be like, this was so fucking stupid.
Are we gonna look back on this and be like, I did not think everyone in the cast of Everything Everywhere All at Once was going to get canceled.
Exactly.
Inside of the same 3 months. I didn't realize Michelle Yeoh is not actually Asian.
At all. It was all prosthetics. All right. We got to wrap up here, but where can people find some of your stuff online, or just if they want to follow you, where are you at?
So I'm really on Instagram at Seattle Juno. You can see me around the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. I produce a monthly queer comedy showcase with another local great comedian, Zanea Kino, who I think has been on the show.
Yeah, I worked with her last night too.
Yeah, but last night, really?
I didn't know that she was producing with you. So
which show were you on with her?
Yadoye Travis.
Okay,
at Laughs.
I haven't heard.
Very funny,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So her and I co-produce this queer comedy showcase called Flock. We do it every second Thursday at Olmsted and Capitol Hill. So come check us out.
Cool. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the like broad spectrum of conversation. I feel like it's 7 loose threads that we didn't wrap up, but
it's okay. We'll have you back on. It just gives you a good reason to come back.
Cool.
Thanks again, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to rate and review us. And then if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that notifications bell so you don't miss our upcoming content. Also, like, subscribe if you have a question about something that we talked about and didn't finish. We'll have Juno come back and we'll do a follow-up episode. We're also on Patreon. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but Fathom and Friends is on Patreon, patreon.com/FNFpod. And we're on Instagram at FNFpod. We're going to leave you guys with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. My wave pool, my wave pool. Welcome to my wave pool, my wave pool. Welcome to my wave pool.